Good afternoon, CMST 430. My name is Brendon Favre, and this is my Module 6 discussion. I was a little confused because the questions posted in the discussion board were for last week's chapter, so I just went ahead and picked two questions from each chapter from the to-do list for this week. So we're going to start with Chapter 9, Question 1. Discuss and differentiate between groups and teams in terms of both development and performance. Why do the authors differentiate? Give examples from the text and your personal experience with groups to help support your answer. So first, we're going to look at the definition of a group and a team. On page 260, the book defines a group as two or more people who think they are a group and have a common goal, structure, and interactions to achieve a desired goal. And a team is a group in which members feel responsible for both their own efforts and collective outcomes, and that can be found on page 261. The difference is that groups, members have similar roles. The book uses the example of nurses, whereas team members have different roles or skill sets, and those are used to come together to achieve a common goal or a purpose. The main difference is that a team, each individual is responsible not only for his or her own part and efforts and contributions to the group, but they're also responsible for the collective outcome. So they have to share their part, and then they're also responsible for the entire outcome, not just their part. The authors differentiate because the two communicate differently. In teams, people want to discuss and come to a conclusion about how to solve a problem, and in groups, the main reason people communicate is to share information without a whole lot of discussion. That can be found on page 261. An example of this would be in an artillery battery. There are 4 separate gun crews, and the different gun crews would be an example of a group because we all have similar roles, and the only communication is to pass information. We're not telling each other how to do anything. It's just to say where we're going to set up or what we're going to do. But the gun crew itself would be an example of a team because each member has a separate role or a separate job that is crucial to accomplishing a shared mission. For question 3 from chapter 9, discuss the impact of various group roles discussed in the chapter. What roles have you played? Think of class or group work. How do you think your peers would describe your roles? I don't think that I've worked on a group project with anybody in this class, so I'll rely on my roles in work groups. One group role I played that is discussed on page 276 is the information seeker. I like to ensure I have relevant and accurate information when trying to solve a problem. I don't like to operate off assumptions or guesses or anything like that. Another one would be the coordinator, discussed on page 277. I feel that I'm pretty good at taking other people's ideas and linking them to the project at hand, so correlating the information to make it useful, and also planning tasks that need to be accomplished, keeping things on a schedule, and keeping the wheels moving. The standard setter, discussed on page 278. I have an eye for detail that has been ingrained in me from the military, and I like to ensure that the problem at hand is being addressed as effectively and efficiently as possible. And one of the more negative roles I would say I have is going to be the dominator, which is on page 279. I don't really like to chit-chat. I've never really been one in the workplace to have interpersonal relationships. I like to go to work. And I find that I often tend to take control, and if people aren't going to speak up, then I can really dominate a discussion or just kind of take over in that sense. Moving into chapter 10, use an example from your personal professional history. Explain Jablin's stages of organizational socialization. How does it work? As you explain this, be sure to use the language of the text with your own examples. So the model of Jablin's stages of organizational socialization can be found starting on pages 296. An example of this would be I was assigned to a new unit in the military. We called this a permanent change of station, or a PCS. I moved from Fort Riley, Kansas to Fort Stewart, Georgia. The anticipatory socialization stage would be I received my orders telling me I was being assigned to a new unit. I hadn't actually joined the new organization yet. I still had to clear my old unit. You have to clear the post and turn in equipment and stuff like that. And then to actually move to the new location. That's discussed on page 296. The next stage of organizational entry and assimilation, pre-entry would be when I moved to my new duty station, physically actually moving there and finding housing. Entry would be arriving to my new unit, and doing the in-processing. This is also where I would learn the norms and the rules of how the unit functioned. All units have different policies and procedures for how they operate, and I needed to learn those before actually assimilating into the unit, which can be found on page 298. The last stage of organizational disengagement and exit. This is usually involuntary, as the Army kind of reassigns you as they see fit. You go where you're needed. And it's usually without your input in most cases, but it can be voluntary if you re-enlist for a specific duty station or job or something like that. The announcement would come in the form of orders, and the actual exit would be clearing your unit. Again, as I discussed in the earlier section of this, that can be found on page 306. Question 4, disengagement was not given much attention, as recruitment or socialization. Still apply the material to your own experience of leaving an organization. How is this accurate in the textbook description, and what might be missing? So disengagement was the last thing discussed on chapter 10, and it was starting on page 305. I actually thought the book did a really good job of discussing the stages of leaving an organization, or the disengagement of an organization. So I didn't really have much to say on how what was missing. An example of this would be I disengaged from the military involuntary. My announcement came in the form of retirement orders, and the actual exit came in the form of me clearing my unit and the post and leaving the military. For the case study, what 2 concepts from your assigned chapter and 1 concept from the other chapter that are germane to the case study? How are the concepts germane? Explain and discuss them using the case to set the tone for the discussion. All right, so my assigned chapter was chapter 10. The concept from chapter 9 would be group communication roles. Dante came off as aggressive and arrogant in his interview. He felt when he felt like he was king. When he heard the good news, that would be an example of self-centeredness, which is discussed on page 279. And it showed he was even more concerned with his own successes rather than the team's successes, because the team failed the mission, but he felt he was on top of the world. The 2 concepts from chapter 10 would be recruiting and organizational socialization. For recruiting, Dante was he self-recruited himself to Bedrock by requesting the interview and being persistent until he got the interview. He was also headhunted by another organization's recruiter and offered a position with another organization. That's just another way recruiting goes. And for organizational socialization, Dante's interview with Bedrock would be his pre-entry to the organization. His entry would be the first project he worked on, and his metamorphosis would be assimilation would be described when he felt like he was a member of the gang. He participated in activities with coworkers outside of the workplace, and he was given a nickname Sparky, which kind of shows that he was accepted by the group and was one of them. There wasn't really any disengagement. He was offered another position with another organization, but it didn't say whether or not he took that or not. There was some conflict with the team, but we can't assume that he took the position based off the information that was presented. And that'll do it for this week. Thanks.